Welcome you all on the behalf of Rahul Anand Tutorials. So as you know that I am Rahul Anand and this is somewhat around my channel whose name is actually the Rahul Anand Tutorials. So now let's begin with the very interesting topics which are oftenly being asked in terms of your Neet, of in the Aiims, of in the All India Pre-Medical Examination. So these are literally belonging from which of the chapters of your book? So these are belonging from the here main term the anatomy of flowering plants. So now let's understand about this. So here we are going to study about what? So here we are going to study about the anatomy of the Monocotyledonous as well as the Dicotyledonous plant bit introduction, as well as further we will be understanding about what? So further we will be understanding about the here main term the anatomy of the Monocotyledonous stem. Now so let's understand about these what are actually the Monocotyledonous as well as the Dicotyledonous anatomy. So for particularly understanding about this, we have to get through with reference to what? We have to get through with reference to the information regarding on the basis of the tissue level of the organization. In terms of what? In terms of the root as well as the stem as well as the leaves. Often when we are talking about these cases, so you have to get the knowledge with reference to what? So for understanding about this, you have to get through the information regarding on the basis of what? Regarding on the basis of the transverse section of the mature zones with reference to your plant's organs, and you are very clear about that. Now, so let's understand about these means what are actually the anatomy of the here main term the Monocotyledonous stem, as well as when we are talking about these things means what are actually the anatomy of the here main term the Monocotyledonous stem. So it will be bearing as well as resembling the certain types of the organs as well as the parts in it. So you could often find it on the board here. And when we are talking about the another components as well as the important parts with reference to what? With reference in the case of the Monocotyledonous stem. So it will be resembling what? So it will be resembling the hypodermis. So when we are talking about the hypodermis, remember what are actually the hypodermis? So hypodermis bearing what things? So your hypodermis is bearing the parenchymatous tissue, which are playing important role in order to provide what? Mean in terms of the hypodermis, playing important role to provide the mechanical support as well as the strength with reference to what? With reference to the young stem. And you are very clear about that. Means what are actually the hypodermis. Often when we are talking about these cases, means what are actually the parenchymatous tissue. Remember what are actually the parenchymatous tissue? So these are playing important role in order to carry out as well as perform the process such as the photosynthesis. Mean in order in terms of what? The parenchymatous tissue. Often when we are talking about the another role, so playing important role in order to perform the photosynthesis process, mean in terms of what? Mean in terms of the parenchymatous tissue. As well as when we are talking about the resemblance of what? Of these, mean in order in terms of the content which are literally being present in terms of your parenchymatous tissue. So these are what? So these are the cellulose, of course, then the pectin. Often you will be having the case such as the lipase. Now, so when we are talking about the case of these, mean in order in terms of the parenchymatous tissue. So these are particularly resembling the structure which is having the cell wall. Often it will be resembling the vacuoles. So you are very clear about that. Means what are actually the vacuoles. Remember? So vacuoles are literally being present with reference to the plant body in terms of the larger amount or either the plant cell. But when we are talking about the case of the here main term of the animal cell, so presence of the vacuoles will be particularly negligible, or either if it will be present in terms of what? In terms of the inferior ratio or either inferior amount. Often when we are talking about what are actually the important roles with reference to the vacuoles, remember? So vacuoles playing important role in order for the expelling of the excess waste product or either the water. Often playing important role in order to carry out the course of the the ingestion of the food ingredients or either the food molecules. Often their presence are literally being present with reference to the plant cell, of course, as well as the animal cells, of course. So when we are talking about these cases, means the presence of the vacuoles in terms of the plant cell. So these are literally being surrounded with reference in the case of what? So these are particularly being surrounded with reference by the here main term of the semi-permeable membrane. So the term or either the process or either the component by which it is particularly being surrounded, meaning in terms of what? In terms of the vacuole. So these are known as what? So these are known as the chloroplast. Now, so talking about what are actually the important roles with reference in the case of the animal cell, in terms of the role of the vacuoles. Remember? So these are playing important role in order to carry out the course of the ingestion of the foods. As well as when we are talking about these cases, means what are actually the structural demonstration as well as the different parts, resemblance, or either the different components which are literally being found with reference to what? With reference in the case of the Monocotyledonous stem. So this will be what? So this will be the epidermis, then we'll be having the hypodermis. Then you will be having the parenchymatous ground tissue. Remember, in the case of the hypodermis, you will be having the scanchymatous hypodermis. And what are actually the scanchymatous hypodermis? Mean in terms of the scanchymatous cells. So you are very clear about that. As well as you will be often having what? So you will be often having the xylem as well as the phloem. Often in terms of what? Often in terms of the vascular bundle. So now let's understand about this in terms of the detail. So you could often popularly found here on the both the particular structure demonstration as well as the diagram here. Now, so when we are talking about the case of what are actually the epidermis, remember? So epidermis is the outermost protective layer, of course, as well as when we are talking about the case of the epidermis, so it will be resembling what? So your epidermis will be resembling the trichosomes. Often when we are talking about these cases, means what are actually the trichosomes, remember? So we are having the two types of the hair-like projection. When it will be present in terms of the root region, coming under what case? So it will be known as the root hair. But when the same types of the hair are literally being present with reference to what? With reference in the case of the stem region. So it will be known as what? So it will be known as the trichosomes. Often when we are talking about these cases, so these are particularly being covered with reference is containing, means in terms of what? Your epidermis is containing the mild amount of the stomata. Often when we are talking about these cases, means what are actually the stomata. Remember, as well as understood. So these are particularly what? So these are the bean-shaped structure, often resembling the pores-like structure, as well as surrounded, as well as protected by what? As well as surrounded, as well as protected by the two bean-shaped structure, as well as composed of the guard-shaped structure, playing important role in order to regulate what? In order to regulate the sufficient amount of the intake of the energy. Remember, so these particularly opening and closing of the stomata are literally being dependent with reference to what? With reference on the case of the humidity, of course. Then in case of the light, often in terms of the summer, often in terms of the gaseous regulation, often in terms of the gaseous exchange. Remember, so we are having the different broad kind of the gases, such as the nitrogen, often the phosphorus. So phosphorus is not the gas, but literally in term we are having the hydrogen. So these literally types of the what? So these are particularly being transformed, of course. So hydrogen will be often coming under the case of the here main term of the gaseous exchange. Often you are having the H2O. So particularly H molecules as well as the oxygen molecules, which are quite a bit diatomic in nature, are particularly being trapped, and these are particularly being here main term of the process in order by the help of the different vital case, as well as the role of what? Of the xylem in order to perform, as well as combine in order to form the water molecules. Main term of what? Main term of the diatomic in nature, which are actually what? Which are actually your oxygen as well as the hydrogen, literally combined in order to form the water molecules. And when we are talking about these cases, means it will be present in terms of the xylem, of course. So xylem are oftenly being present with reference in the case of what? With reference in the case of the monocotyledonous stem. Remember the role? So when we are talking about the case of the xylem, remember, so playing important role in order to transport the water, often in the case of the minerals. So transport the waters as well as the minerals in terms of the here main term of the different geographical region of the body. However, when we are talking about the case of the xylem, so in this case what will be happening? So in this case the unidirectional flow of energy will be occurring. You remember? Now, often when we are talking about the presence of these xylems, so this will be present in terms of the side portion of the vascular bundle. Remember? After that it is often resembling the phloem. So in the case of the phloem we are having what? So in the case of the phloem we are having the bidirectional flow of the energy will be taking place. Very clearly knowing. Often when we are talking about these cases, means particularly what? The phloem playing an important role in order to transport the food ingredients, often the different types of the molecules as well as the nutrients in order from the here main term of the leaves region towards what? Towards the different disc of the body of the plant, of course. Why is it so? This is due to because primarily the energy storage or either the existence of the energy is coming from what region? So these are particularly being coming under from the leaves region only. So you are very clear about the mechanism of the energy intake in order in terms of the course of what? In terms of the carrying of the course of the autotrophs. Remember? So these are particularly having the leaves on which what will be happening, on which the chlorophyllous pigment are literally being present. Often these are playing important role in order for what? In order to perform the photosynthesis. And in order in terms of the intake of the energy, what will be happening? Remember very clearly. So playing important role to trap the photon energy and convert it into the chemical energy. So these are particularly being present with reference on the case of what? On the case of the xylem. Here, main term of the phloem disc, of course. So when we are talking about these cases, so this will be present with reference to what? With reference in the case of the phloem region. Often, when we are talking about the another component, such as what? So we have dealt about what? So we have dealt about the xylem, of course, then the phloem. Often we have dealt about what are actually the epidermis. When we are talking about the case of the epidermis, now, so you have very clearly understood about that. Now, as well as when we are talking about the another component, so it will be often having the, tell me, the skin comatose. Here main term of the skin comatose, hypodermis. Are we talking about the case of the skin comatose, hypodermis? Remember? So in this case, what will be happening? So the skin comatose, hypodermis are literally being purged with reference in the case of what? In the case of the monocotyledonous state. Often when we are talking about the case of what? Of the here main term the vascular bundle. So a large as well as the huge number of the vascular bundle are literally being purged with reference to what? With reference in the case of the monocotyledonous state. As well as when we are talking about these cases, means what are actually the hypodermis? Remember?